Hey Creagears, Robert here and welcome back to episode 3 of our Custom Amiibo month. Time to turn for another 7-minute boss off our list, with today's candidate being the Maws. Yeah, no plastic and hot glue this time, but I think we will get enough of that with the next one though. But there's going to be enough talking, let's get started. Like always, we start with an aluminium base for the figure we want to make. For our Maws, we wanted to make the amiibo in the same pose as you can find in the 7-minute field guide. And so, as seen in the model, we gave the Maws some special attention for the pointed end of its top jaw and the rounder end on its lower jaw with our first pass of epoxy sculpt. After this first coating was applied, we could then start on some finer details, starting by focusing on the lips around both jaws. First making a base using our fingers, but then shifting over to some finer silicone tools. Once those were nicely defined, we could then use a ball tool to make the sockets of the eyes. Then we make a small snake of clay that I flatten with a curved edge on one end and then press the other end into the side of the Maws to make its gills. And using our flat silicone tool to raise the other end for a bit more prominency in our sculpt. Then some smaller ball tools are also used to make the nostrils of the salmonid. But still, those are like for creatures with lungs, right? Or is that just me? And those smaller tools are then also used to make the big scar that every single Maws seems to have on its nose. Then we use a bigger ball tool to finish the back of its mouth, and afterwards we can then make and attach its tongue. Then the chin was extended to give the maw its more whale-like properties. And this was then smoothed in with the rest of the sculpt. Next the side fins are made. Continuing, the scales are also added. Before we set it on a plate of silicone to dry, while still being able to remove it. Then we can add the dorsal fin. And some more scales are also added with the aluminium stamp. And at last we make two smaller balls of clay that we press into the sockets to finish the eyes. Next, all we had to do was use the leftover clay to make the waves that the Maw creates as it jumps out of the ink. For this we started by making a big snake of clay that we then fused on both ends to make a ring. This ring was then added to the base and, using some tools, this was then pressed on the inside. Next, a thinner tool was used for the outside edge to fuse it to the base. But instead only the lower part. This then leaves the top of the ring to be pressed flat outwards, which are then refined using my fingers. These will then make the bases of the waves before some extra little splashes are also added. Made from some different sized balls, which are then squeezed on one end to a point and then added to the inner part of the waves. But even after all of that sculpting, we still have some more details to add to the Maws. Starting with a lot of small rectangles to cut from some 2mm EVA foam to make the teeth of the salmon in. These we then grab with our tweezers, then add a little drop of super glue to one end, and then spray the inside of the mouth of the Maws with some accelerant to add the dentals one by one by one. But we're not even nearly done with the EVA foam yet. Next we can use it to make a band to act as the base of the belt for the Maws, gluing it around the end of the sculpture from one side to the dorsal fin to the other. Which afterwards also gets a little strip of foam on top to finish the shape. Next, some larger 5mm EVA foam rectangles are used to make the bases of the two pockets that the gear includes, as well as the buckle. Using some round punches that we partially press into the foam to make the illusion of the two parts of the buckle. Then the pockets are rounded on the lower edge before being finished with some craft paper as the top of the pockets. Then these ammo container boosters are made using some 6mm plywood that was cut to shape before being partially drilled into to make the hole of the booster on top. Before some deeper holes are then added to both sides with a smaller drill bit for the handles. And these are then made with some good old aluminium wire. But before the handle could be attached, a little strip of craft paper is added for some more detail, after which the handle is hung in place on the booster. Finally, a wood burner is used to make the hinge points on the belt, with some good ventilation to carry away all of those toxic fumes that it creates. And with that, we can finally start to prepare the paint. First, as we do each time, a base coat of black on the belt and the gear. And a white coating on the rest of the figure. Next, the black is mixed with a dark green to be painted over the gear, except for the buckle and the boosters, because the buckle gets an extra coat of black, and afterwards the booster gets a coat of gunmetal. Then we leave the mask to dry for a bit to be able to work on the 5 layers of green that the ink needs. Next, a peach is used for the face of the maw, making sure not to get too much into the mouth and especially not on the wider teeth. Speaking of the mouth, these parts are next to be painted with a blood red mixed with a normal red. During which we really tried to not get it onto the teeth, but to be able to get around the lips and the tongue, we still got some of the chompers. So it looks like we need to add another coat of white to get back some of those pearly whites. But before we can do that, we actually need to go over the face one more time with a lighter peach, because it just wasn't really to our liking, just a little bit too bright. Then we can do the teeth. And then add a light olive grey over both eyes. After which we can then also add the iris with some pure red and the pupils with some black. Finally, we can add the distinctive pink-purple color of the Maws. This color was then used all over the bottom of the body, on its gills, around the chin, and on the sides of the fin. Also some red was later added onto the scar of the nose, and also some on the little ones that appeared during sculpting, just for a little bit more extra character. Then some of the pink purple is mixed with a black to create this light purple to add to the inside of the fins, both on the top and the bottom. Then, after letting it dry, we can grab the light peach one more time to make it into the camouflage pattern on the transition between the pink and the peach. And with that, we got all the painting done, so let's add the electronic circuit to the amiibo. With a green LED for the inside of the mouth and a red LED to use as the lure, with a little hook at the end made from some very thin wire. So now we can use some of our chunks to get the green LED in place at the end of the mouth, and then use some hot glue to attach it. After which we then get the nerve-wracking task to snip and cut a piece out of the belt to make place for the switch. Ugh.
Are you with me?
Sorry, but this really needed our attention. But with this much hot glue visible, why not just grab a little bit of the transparent green paint to make it into some green water. This way we can also fill the mouth, and we can clean up the glue up around the ink. And then this, the ink, and the rest of the skin of the Maws gets a coating of gloss varnish. And with that, we can announce the Splatoon 3 Next Wave Maws Custom Amiibo finished! Hey Creagears, Robo here, and we hope you enjoyed this third custom amiibo. As some of you guys might have already been able to see in the assembly part, but the Maws and the Goldie were actually made at the same time. So we better get back to the workshop to make the 2 custom amiibos of this week, otherwise we might not get them done on time. So, keep those creative gears turning, and we will see you guys next Sunday.